I managed to coin a term that seems to upset a lot of Marxists. When you use it, they get really angry, but they can't articulate why they're angry. And the new term that I coined is late stage anti-racism. Whenever you say this, they get really upset. And it's really nice to say it when you provide an article next to it and you say, okay, this is late stage anti-racism. Like, here's an example. To make orchestras more diverse, end blind auditions. If ensembles are to reflect the community they serve, the audition process should take into account race, gender, and other factors. This is late stage anti-racism. When black students deserve to get better grades just because they're black, that is late stage anti-racism. When California decides to repeal bills that are meant to prevent the government from discriminating based on race, that is late stage anti-racism. See what I'm talking about? It's really interesting, right? The way it works is that people used to discriminate based on skin color. They used to give preferential treatment based on skin color. And then came the idea that maybe we shouldn't, like maybe we should just not discriminate. You know, like what Martin Luther King used to say, it's like judge a person based on their characters rather than the color of their skin. Well, then they moved from that into discriminating based on skin color again. That is late stage anti-racism. And so far, I have yet to see a single study or statistic that shows that late stage anti-racism actually heals race relations or makes it better for the members of the marginalized community. It does seem to be something that makes people feel good when they do it. It does seem to be something that corporations can vacuously promote in order to look good in the public eye, but no concrete evidence that this actually solves racism. Like, please show me a study that actually says, all right, well, in this city or in this company, we implemented late-stage anti-racism techniques, and as a conclusion, there is less racism now. You need to understand, there are different ways of fighting racism besides being an anti-racist. Like, liberalism, for example, used to be another way of fighting racism. I have an entire video dedicated to that, but the Associated Press. Now, the Associated Press made a very bizarre decision that literally helps absolutely no one, changes absolutely nothing, and it's just bewildering to behold. So, I'm not an English-speaking person by birth. I had to learn the English language, and I understand that when you talk about an ethnicity or a race, you do not capitalize the word. Like, you do not write black with capital B. Like, all ethnicities are being written with underscore letters, right? Like, it's how it works. But no, for some bizarre reason, the Associated Press decided to capitalize every single ethnicity. So they're now going to capitalize Latino, they're going to capitalize black, they're going to capitalize everything except for white. And white, they're going to write it with an underscore. It's just like so bizarre. Like, it's almost like they're worshipping other ethnicities, because it brings me back to my religion class in school. Because yes, we did study religion here in Romania, and I remember the priest coming up to me and noticing that I was spelling God with lowercase g, and he was upset about it. He said, no, you have to write God with capital G. And I was like, why? Is it his name? It's like, no, like, for God we make an exception because he is mighty and powerful and we worship him. We're going to write God with capital G. And I'm like, okay, you know. And then I have to write something about Satan. I forgot the actual context, but I write it with capital S because I figured, like, well, that's his name, right? And the priest was furious, you know, he slaps my hand and goes like, no, you do not write Satan with capital S, you write it with underscore S. And it's like so hilarious because they're literally doing the same right now. And again, name me the person that benefits from this. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? It's just utterly bizarre. So they feel the need to explain this. And they say that they're going to continue to lowercase the term white when used in a racial, ethnic, or cultural sense. So I guess like if it's a color, you're going to use capital W. Oh, I guess if it's like Mr. White, like if it's Mr. White, then they can use capital W, right? The statement comes 1 month after they changed the style to capitalize black when used in a similar way. So bizarre. The vice president for standards, John Danisevsky, wrote that people who are black share historical and cultural similarities, including discrimination based on the color of one's skin, whereas white people across the globe do not have strong commonalities. Like, this is so ignorant. I can't even believe that someone can say something so utterly ignorant. First of all, like, you're considering that all black people are the same, which is completely false. Like, if you travel to Africa, you will notice that black people have different cultures based on ethnicities and the geographical location, much like white people have in Europe. It's the same way, like, a Canadian is different to an American culturally, and an American is different to a German or a Hungarian. It's due to the upbringing, and it's the same, with a black person from the United States to a black person from Zimbabwe. And they're just erasing all of this rich diversity and trying to paint all of them with the same brush. That is unbelievably ignorant. And then you look at the white people, and they also do the same ignorance by erasing all of these differences, and also saying that, okay, white people were never oppressed. Like, first of all, that's a lie. I mean, just Google white woman slave sold to the Islamic Empire, and you will see a picture of artists that are in museums, and I can't show them here on YouTube because of nudity, but you will see white women being sold off to auction in the Middle East. That's history. Like, you're so ignorant not to know that. And even then, like, you can also talk about the oppression that peasants suffered here in Europe. Like, peasants were forced to, in my country, to work on the noble's manor. Manor meaning not just the house where he lived, but also the land surrounding it. And they weren't allowed to leave. Like, they needed express permission from the noble if they wanted to travel to the city. Is that not oppression? Or is it fine if it's white people doing it to white people? So, like, if I can trace my lineage to a peasant, it somehow doesn't matter because the people oppressing the peasants were the same race. Like, how does that even work? And I'm not even counting all the minorities that came and raped and pillaged the area, like the Goths, the Huns, the Ostrogoths, the Tatars, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, for example, took slaves for their slave army, the Yeniçer. It's like, all of this history is now being erased, and I don't know why, like, out of sheer ignorance, because these journalists, I suppose, are either disingenuous or they're some of the most uneducated people that I have ever seen. And not to mention, like, I remember recently, the Democrat Party had this event where, wanting to, do some activism for the black community, they dressed themselves with African symbols, and the black community was livid because the symbols they used were from the black slave traders that sold them, from Africa. And again, like, it shows that you can't paint an entire race of people with the same brush just to fit your narrow ideology. It's so disrespectful. It's so ignorant. And then they say, look at this white people's skin color. So how does my skin color, like, do anything? Like, why do you hate Martin Luther King so much? But plays into systemic inequalities and injustices. Okay, perfect. Let's talk about systems for a second, because it's systemic. Systems. Okay. Now, let's talk about, I don't know, what do you want? Hollywood. Okay? Name me an actor that would vote for Trump. Name me an actor that's a Republican, because I guarantee to you, you're going to have a hard time thinking of one, and if you do, you're probably going to come up with a list of names that I can count on one hand. Meanwhile, I can name you a gajillion Hollywood actors that are Democrat, that supported Hillary Clinton, that support Joe Biden, that have all of these talking points, that are very progressive. Same with directors. So when it comes to the system of Hollywood, which is the most powerful tool at creating movies in the West, it's controlled by the left. Let's talk about social media. Name me a single person in social media, like a CEO, from Silicon Valley, or someone that's higher up at Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want, that supports Donald Trump, that is a Republican, that is a right-winger. Let's talk about big corporations like Disney or Apple, or like any major corporation you want. And how many of them openly support Donald Trump or are Republican or right-wing? All of them have diversity officers in them that promote a left-leaning ideology. They all donate money to the Democrats. I mean, okay, let's look at academia. Name me right-wing university professors, because I can name you Marxist university professors, openly so. Professors that support the Democrats. Let's look at music. How many musicians do you know that openly support Donald Trump? Again, I can count them on one hand. Like, let's play a game. You tell me one that supports Trump, I tell you one that supports a Democrat. And we can go this until someone runs out of musicians. Not to mention when you look at major cities where all these events are happening, where you have all these tragedies happening to black people, Democratic mayor, Democratic governor, Democratic police chief. Isn't that interesting? So if that is a thing with systemic racism, because it's systemic, then the left surely is to blame, because all these institutions are left-leaning, aren't they? I guess like the only institution would be the presidency, right? But didn't you have like a left-leaning president, or that he doesn't count anymore? Like, you literally had a left-leaning president before this one. So like, if it's systemic, which are the institutions that are legitimately creating racism then? Which are they? So we can look who is running them. Like, what is the ideology of the people running them? And by the way, I wish I could say, well, institutions don't really have an ideology, and in the 90s that maybe that would have been the case. But now even Gillette, like a company that sells razors, has a political ideology, has a political message to send you. Like, even the institutions are now politicized. Even academia is politicized. It's insane. So whenever you hear the idea that, oh, there is institutionalized racism, just give them the argument. Okay, there is. I'm not going to argue against it. Surely the left is causing it. It's the left. And allow the other person to tell you which right-wing institution is helping create this system of racism. But anyway, so apparently we want our journalists to robustly explore these problems, but capitalizing the term white as is done by white supremacists risks subtly conveying legitimacy to such beliefs. But no one is asking you to capitalize anything. Like, in the English language, ethnicities are not written with capital letters. So I don't understand why you would have to capitalize white. Like, why can't you just have the same standard for everything and just write all the ethnicities with lowercase letters? And like, look at the logic, okay? Just look at the logic. If capitalizing the W is what white supremacists do, what does that say when you capitalize the B? I mean, it's your logic. I don't know what white supremacists do. I don't read their shit. But it seems the Associated Press is quite busy at reading white supremacist literature, to the point that they know that it's written with capital W. I personally do not read that. So I don't know where they get their info from. But yeah, maybe they listen to CNN analyst Richard Spencer, so it's really bizarre. I don't know what else to say. It's just so surreal. Like, why do they feel the need to do this? Either then, I guess it's like to show that they're virtuous people or something. It's like being a Christian and showing to people and shouting from the bottom of your lungs that you go to church at Sunday morning. It's like, congratulations. Here's one thing. What is a social justice warrior? Like, how can we explain this concept to normal people? Here is how. It's like, do you know how everyone believes that Nazis are bad and no one likes them? Yeah. Well, a social justice warrior wants a standing ovation for saying that Nazis are bad.